Today we're talking about your website's navigation, also called the menu. This is what people use to browse around your website. And this matters a lot because a bad, confusing, overwhelming menu means people leave or they can't even get to the pages they're trying to see. So if they can't browse easily between pages, then they won't want to hang around and they won't get to see all of the awesome stuff you're offering. So in today's episode, I'm telling you how to make your navigation super effective with some best practices, some rules to follow, and easy fixes that you can do today without hiring a designer to make your menu amazing. So let's dive in. Hey guys, it's Elizabeth McCravey, and you're listening to the Breakthrough Brand Podcast. Each week, I'll bring you workshop-style trainings that teach you how to stand out online, design success from the inside out, and create a breakthrough business. It's time to turn viewers into raving fans and design the business and life of your dreams. I'm so excited you're here. Hello guys, are you excited to talk about navigation menus? This is such a funny topic because it feels so boring to me, yet there's so much to say about it, and it is something that really does matter a lot on your website. And I know you guys loved the episode I did about contact pages. Just scroll back to find that one if you haven't listened to it. I'm planning to go through every page of the website and tell you guys like, here's some do's and don'ts, here's what needs to be on the page and all that kind of stuff. But instead of tackling another page today, I decided I wanted to tackle the website menu because this is on basically every page. So we're really covering like a way to improve every single page of your website by covering this one area. So I have 4 main tips I'm going to share with you, but I also have 3 like small tips I want to share before we get started to make sure we're all on the same page of like understanding what the menu is and some things about how it's used and that kind of thing. If this might feel like a little bit new to you, like I haven't really thought much about my menu, this is going to help. So first thing, what is it? So this, I'm going to use these words interchangeably throughout this, but menu, navigation, menu bar, there are other names, but all of them are the same thing. These are the things linked that help people navigate between different pages in your website. So it's typically linked text that someone clicks on and it takes them to that page. And there's a couple of different common navigation styles you'll see on websites. So 3 of them I want to just walk you through real fast. The standard way is when there's a horizontal menu across the top of your website. There might be a logo in the middle with like 3 or 4 options on each side of the logo. There could be a logo on the far left and then all the options come after that, like evenly spaced out, or there might be no logo at all, but it's like across the top, and it could be sticky to the top, which means it stays at the top of the window when you scroll down, or it could be inline to the page where as you scroll down, the menu disappears and you have to scroll back up to see it. And both are completely fine ways to do a menu. I do want to go ahead and throw in like a bonus tip right here though. If you're going to make your menu sticky to the top of your page, meaning it stays up there when people scroll, do not make it giant. Make it as small as makes sense because you're taking away valuable real estate on your website where people can be viewing everything else and it's being taken up by the menu. So that's one of my personal like, oh, that's such an easy fix when I see this on websites because it's like you're taking up the whole page with your menu, which is not the point. We want people to be able to see the other content as well. And that's especially a common problem on mobile websites because on mobile, it's most often that the menu, which it's going to be a hamburger style menu, which I'll get to in a moment, but you click it open, but that's most commonly what we see on mobile sites. But sometimes people put their logo in it and just make it really big. And then before you know it, you're taking up like half of someone's phone with the menu. So just don't do that. Check yours out and make sure like, hey, if someone has a pretty small computer, am I taking up too much real estate with this standard menu? Okay, the next style of menus, I just already mentioned it, a hamburger menu. This gets the name because it's 3 lines stacked on top of each other that are all the same size. So it kind of looks like a hamburger. And a cool thing, you guys, when we think about website design and user experience design, when people see those 3 lines stacked on top of each other, even if you did not know it's called a hamburger menu, you might totally have not known that. But when we see that, our minds naturally know, I click on that and it's going to expand into something. I click on that and it might be a menu. So that's just a great thing to remember here of like when we're thinking about user experience for our menus, replacing, if you're doing a hamburger menu, using some other icon that looks nothing like what we're expecting it to is going to create a bad experience for your users. There are, of course, other kind of icons that could work, but like that's what people expect to see. So basically, this is 3 lines stacked on top of each other. It stays sticky to the left or right of the page as you scroll down. And then when you click on it, it expands out into a menu that could look a variety of ways. There's so many cool ways you can do a hamburger menu. And so this is what's on my website currently. If you're like, wait, what does that look like? And then also in the Nicole and Reese templates in my template shop, if you're wanting to see examples of those, go to elizabethmccravey.com/shop and you can look at that. So this is a great option for when there's a lot of menu choices that you're going to be putting out there, which we'll get to that today on like how many options is the right number. So keep listening for that. Or if your menu options need longer descriptions, because, you know, if we're putting it all in line on the top, if you're writing out something really long as a choice, it's going to take up a lot of space. But in a hamburger menu, you can make stuff longer. So those are kind of some reasons you would want one. And the third way, this is the less common on sites like mine and yours, but very common on shops. So a sidebar menu, these are often sticky to the left or right again. I feel like I see it most often on the left, but it's where everything is open at the same time. Like it's just always open like it would be on the standard menu, but it's on like the whole left side or the whole right side of the page. So again, that's less common, but that is another style. So that's kind of what it is. Now, the next thing I want to tell you guys to get started, not every page in your website needs to be in the navigation menu. And you might be thinking, Elizabeth, of course it doesn't. I knew that. Or that might sound like new information to you. I've noticed that people get confused about this sometimes of like, I get the question of like, how do I have a page on my site that's not in the navigation? It's like, you can have like as many pages as you want, and most of them should not be in the navigation. So your menu should not include every page in your website, not even a little bit. And you can have pages that exist on your website that are linked through buttons and text within a page, or you can have pages that are just never linked at all, that you're just sending someone the direct link to, and that's how they access it. So like, for example, I have like 10-ish freebies around that number on my website that you can download, and none of them are in my navigation, but they are linked within my resources page and in some blog posts. So you go to the resources page, and then that's the way to open up these pages with the freebies. And I also have pages that are literally linked nowhere, not even within a page, that I send to people as needed, or that I just still have on my website, but I'm not using anymore. So just know too, as you think about like structuring your website, one thing I love to do, I call it a sitemap, but I'll write out like, okay, homepage, about page, service page, and so on, like in a list in a Google Doc or on a sheet of paper. And then you can kind of break down of like, okay, from the service page, they'll have options to go into these 3 new pages, or from the resource page, they'll have option to click into this freebie or to click to this blog post and so on. And that can give you a good visual for what you're doing internally within your website that isn't like seeable to like just anyone, but you're seeing it through the way you're setting it up. So anyway, that's one thing. Not all pages need to be in the navigation. Another thing, the menu should be on basically every page of your website, and it should look the same on every page. So the worst thing you can do for user experience is changing the menu on people page to page, or leaving the menu off of a page where people naturally think it should go. So for example, your about page should have a menu on it, and it should match the menu on your homepage and your contact page and so on. But an exception to this is things like a sales page, a lead magnet, a webinar sign up page, a thank you page, things of that nature. Those cannot have a menu, and I actually recommend in most cases that those don't have menus or a footer. Like basically it's just that one choice. And the reason for that, I like to call these pages one action pages, because we want someone to take just one action. And we don't really want them to leave the page without taking that one action. So like for a lead magnet, for example, those pages are typically going to have not that much copy, not that much images, and you're basically just trying to get the person put in your name and email to get this freebie. And so we don't need the distraction of a menu. We don't need the distraction of like the footer with your Instagram feed or anything like that. Same with a sales page. The goal, like there's going to be tons of buttons throughout it, but the goal is for people to click on that button, which all is going to lead them to a checkout page. If you look at my sales funnel kits, you'll see that in action of like, there is a menu on those, but the only reason is for the navigation purposes. And then in the course you get with it, I tell you that like in most cases you should remove the menu, but you'll see there's no like Instagram feed at the bottom or anything like that. It just ends with like the call to action. Okay. So those are 3 important things. Now we got to get on to the tips, but hey, there were a bunch of bonus tips in there, which is pretty awesome. And I just realized hilariously, if you're new here, I did not mention like how I know website stuff. So I'm a website designer. And at this point, I've worked with hundreds of women on their websites through my template shop and custom work as well. And so this stuff on like website navigation is based on what works in my business and what works in my clients and customers' business. So that's where all this is rooted in. So just wanted to throw that out there because I forgot to earlier. All right. So now let's get on to the tips. So the first big tip for making your website navigation menu super effective. Okay, so use clear and concise wording for the menu, plus use keywords specific to your business. So this is kind of 2 tips in one. So let me start with that first part. Using clear and concise wording. Do not over-explain the option. Keep it simple. And ideally, you want these words, like, so for example, homepage, about page, that's what I'm talking about here, those linked text to the pages. Ideally, you want them to be less than 3 words. Less stuff for people to read is best. It helps with decision fatigue and overwhelm when they can just see what the option is and know it's what they want to click on. You also want to use really clear words, which means using words that people expect to be used to describe that page. And I think that's something really important that a lot of websites miss. So like, for example, if you have a contact page, speaking of that, because we did an episode on that, contact is a great name in the navigation to use to link to the contact page. And the reason for that is because people know when they see contact, it's going to lead to a form, maybe with your hours on that page, maybe your social media links. It's going to have options for how to reach out to you, and people know what it means. But then you could come up with some other way to describe it that could be long and unnecessary. Like, so for example, in your navigation, if you say, reach out to us is the option, that we still know what that means, but that's an unnecessary amount of words when we can just say contact and people are going to know the same thing and they'll be able to make a decision and read it quicker. And I know that's such a small difference, but I really do think it matters because people's attention spans are short and you just have a little bit of time to make them move throughout your site. Another example is about. Using the word about is great. It's clear and people know what it means. You could also say something like about us or meet the team if that's more relevant to your business. But if I were to put in my navigation bar, Elizabeth, like just a link that says that, no one's going to know what that means. It's going to take people a second to figure out that's the about page. Another example I've seen commonly is the blog. People know what blog means, but if you put something like through our lens or behind the scenes, which I actually have seen those on websites, or journal even, I think that can be confusing to your audience of like what you're clicking over to. So at the same time though, as wanting to be really clear, I also want to encourage you to use words that are specific to your unique business when it makes sense. So for example of that, instead of just saying services, you could get more specific to like what that page is going to be about. So it could say photography services, coaching, get coached, work with me, website design, things like that. And those are going to be better cues for people to know, oh, that's what I want to click over to when they were looking for that specific service. So for example, like on my website right now, which I totally could change this by the time you're listening, but if you look at my navigation, I have shop. So it says shop, which is not very descriptive, by the way. If someone's like, what's in the shop? It's like, well, you have to like figure out what my website's about to know that's templates. But then I also have a button in the navigation, because I have a hamburger menu that expands, but I have a button that says website template shop. So I'm telling people what they're going to find there. So if someone's on my website and they're thinking like, I want a website, that's going to give them a better cue than shop might. And again, I know that's so specific, but I really do think it makes a difference. And something else I want to point out right here that is helpful to know, in the navigation menu, you're getting to pick what that text says. You're typing it in, especially if you're a Showit user. You're literally saying like, I want to say up here, services. But the actual page name can be different, like the actual URL for the page can be different than what you say in the menu, and your SEO settings can be different. So just because in your navigation, all you're saying is services does not mean that the SEO settings, like the page name, has to be just services. You can make it say, Showit website templates by Elizabeth McCravey. That can be the whole name as an example instead of just services. So that's just something to note, because I think that, again, can trip people up. Okay, so that's the first tip though. Use clear and concise wording while also using keywords that are specific to your business, as an example, like photography or design and things like that. All right, our second tip, I'm going to tell you a number of options that you should have up there. So I'm going to go with 8 options. And that's what I've always said. And there are so many different recommendations you hear for this, but I stand by like no more than 8 choices. And that does not mean you need to try to get to 8 if there are not 8 relevant things for you to link, but, try not to do more than 8. And again, like I said to start, not every page needs to be in your navigation. You're picking the most important ones for your business, which, by the way, is going to be completely different than my business or your best friend's business or whoever's business. Like, for example, if you run a business where people do not fill out a contact form as a step towards working with you, the contact page might not even need to be in your main navigation. It could just be linked in your footer. I like to do footer menus too, like that stays consistent throughout the whole site. But that's just an example of like that page might be relevant for someone else's business, but not your own. So as you look at your navigation, I would encourage you, like while you're listening to this episode, go count. Like, do you have more than 8? And if not, I want you to consider like which ones you can get rid of in the navigation, not deleting the page. And I have a couple questions for you to ask to like help you refine this. And even if you're looking at it and you're like, well, Elizabeth, I do have less than 8. I have 7. Still, like, is there one we can delete to simplify, you guys? Giving people less options gives more likely chance to take action. Okay, so here's the questions I want you to ask. Are there any pages that are less important and can be moved to the footer navigation? Again, the footer is something that, similar to your menu, stays consistent throughout the whole website. So you could have links that stay down there that are not in the main navigation. For example, I have an Etsy shop, you guys know that, and I want to link to it from my website, but that's actually not like a huge thing I'm trying to promote in general or on my website. So it literally says in my footer navigation, Etsy shop, but in my main navigation, there's like no links to that. So that's just an example of like that's something that doesn't need to be in the main menu. Okay, next question. Are there any pages that could be combined? Like literally taking them and making them 2 pages. So like, for example, if you have a testimonials page and you're linking to that in your main navigation, could you maybe put the testimonials just throughout your website or on the services page instead of having it have its own page? Or even if it does, you leave it as its own page and that's something you're like sending people to when they specifically ask about it, but it's not something that you're linking to in the main navigation. I actually think having a testimonials page linked to in your navigation, people are so much less likely to click on it because they just know that's going to be a page saying that you're awesome to work with. Whereas if they're just scrolling through your about page and there's an awesome testimonial about you, they're more likely to read it. So anyway, that's just a thought on that. But are there any pages that could be combined? Like, for example, too, if you have a page for about the company and team and mission, like all those are separate pages, could you put them into one page? Same for a portfolio. Like, could your portfolio share a page with the service page? Or could you just link from the service page to the portfolio page and not be in the main navigation? So that's actually my third question. Are there any pages that could just be linked to within a page but not in the main navigation? So like I said, with the portfolio, could your wedding photography page just have a button that says see the portfolio instead of it being in the main navigation? Could you link to all your services from one page? Like if you have, let's say, 5 services, which maybe that's something we need to talk about, another conversation that you should remove some of those services. But let's say you have a lot of services, having them all in the navigation can be a lot of information. So could you put them all on one page that's linked to in the navigation? Okay, so that's the second one. Have less than 8 options in the navigation. Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed, so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravy.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravy.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. All right, so with those 8 options, you might be thinking, what order should I put them in? Like psychologically speaking, what works best? And I actually have some facts for you on that. So the most important things should go first and last in your navigation menu. And there's a psychological theory around this. It's called the serial position effect, if you are curious to look it up. But experiments show that when people were presented with a list of words, they tend to remember the first few and last few and are more likely to forget those in the middle of the list. And people have applied that to so many different things, one of them being websites of people expecting the most important things to be first and last, and that the stuff that's less important is in the middle. And I know I think this way when I see navigation menus. I'm sure you do too. And it's kind of funny when I learned this theory because I realized like we're all kind of intuitively doing this without even realizing it. So if you look at your navigation, you might realize like, oh, it was just already set up that way. Or if you have like a template from me, for example, it would have been set up that way to where, you know, something like the home page is typically first, and then something like contact or blog is typically last. So we just kind of know that. And it's become common website standards, which is another reason why this matters, you guys, because people expect things to be in a certain order. So if we land on your website and in your standard navigation menu across the top, it has services about home. That's the order it goes in. That's going to throw people off. They're going to click over to services thinking it's going to take them to the home page because we're used to home being the first option. So if you're like, okay, Elizabeth, that's great. What order should mine go in? Always start with home first and always have a link to your home page. I think that's also a thing I see sometimes with people not even linking to that in their navigation. You totally should. So start with home page. And then typically right after that, about page or service page is going to be a good next thing. And the option to pay you, to book you, to take the next step should always be the last option. So for some of you, that is the contact page. For others of you, it could be a button like to enroll in your course or like some option around that. Typically, though, I think we expect the contact page like to be last though. So That's a fun thing though to learn if most important things should go first and last. So that's the third tip. Okay, fourth tip. And then this is the last main tip, and then I have some bonus tips for you guys too. So the fourth tip, do not do 1,000 drop-down menus. Okay, so drop-down menus are when someone hovers on something or clicks on something and it expands into more of a menu. So they are not user-friendly when they're used in excess, which again, hear me say in excess. I do think they can certainly be user-friendly when it's just a couple options. But in most cases, it's a bad solution to a situation where you're wanting to shove so much into your navigation. And I think the drop downs are a way people try to do that when they should be looking to other solutions to just have less options. So again, though, I want to just say, I'm not saying all drop downs are bad. I do think they have their place, and I've used them on sites I've designed at different times. But for example, big retailers, like big shop websites, you'll see drop downs a lot. And typically they feel overwhelming, but are at least sensible because there are so many options. Like a great example of this is Wayfair's website. So wayfair.com, if you guys want an example of what I'm talking about, on their desktop site, when you hover over things, it expands to 20 options within that category, which I think that works well for them, but not for your business. So I think sometimes we see people like Wayfair do something like that, and it's it's overwhelming, but it's also gonna help people get to where they're wanting to go faster, which really should be the goal of drop-down menus, you guys, of not shoving more information in, but helping people take less steps to get to where they want to go. But that having that many options is you're not the same as Wayfair, so we don't need that. So if you're going to use a drop down, I would say for most businesses, again, thinking about you guys listening, having just one drop down menu in the whole navigation is probably best. And then having no more than 4 options in that drop down. So say maybe I click on services or something like work with us, and then it opens up a drop down with 4 options. That's going to work fine. But if it opens up a thing with 8 options, just all in a row stacked on top of each other, that's going to feel really overwhelming to the user. So that's my 4th tip. Okay, now I want to get into the bonus tips that are just little fast things for you guys to do. Or really not even fast things you need to do, but fast things that if you're wanting to do some more interesting stuff or need something really specific to your business needs, these are going to be good tips. So first thing, something you could do, I do this and I think it's really effective. I've done this on a lot of custom sites and in some of my templates. Using a button to call out your most important thing. So I mean literally having a button up in the navigation or in your hamburger menu, however, that is your most important thing. So I really love doing this, and you can make the button. What I'd recommend is if you're using a standard navigation bar, make the button in the far right corner. That's where people are going to expect it to be. Again, we want to go with user experience of what people expect. Or if it's a hamburger menu, do it at the bottom of the menu. And on a mobile site, when it's the hamburger menus expanded, because we see those a lot on mobile sites, make it at the bottom. And make it a call to action to the most important thing in your business right then. Which means the button can change what it says, which is another reason I really like this. So the button could say schedule a call with you, contact us now, or it could be information about say you have a course where the doors are open right now. It could say the course name or enroll in the course name or whatever. So I think that's a really effective way to do it. Another thing that kind of goes along with this one that is especially going to be nice if you have a hamburger menu, you can do what's called a hello bar at the very top of your website. Typically these stay sticky to the top, and it's going to be a really skinny bar that has some text on it and a button. If you look up hello bar, maybe just Google it or go to my website. I have a hello bar on most pages actually. So maybe just look there. But you can see what I'm talking about. And so that's an area for you to call people to action on a specific thing that might not even be in your navigation. So on my site, it's a call to action to take the website personality quiz. And when someone clicks on that, it's going to take them to the page for that quiz, which is not linked to in my main navigation. During a launch, I might change that to be there's new templates, click here to shop. So that's how you would use them in your business of calling attention to something important right then, using it for an email opt-in. That's a great way, you guys, to get more people on your email list without doing constant pop-ups throughout the whole page. People are going to see it up there and click on it. So yeah, using a button or a hello bar, that's just another random tip. Okay, second thing. Add social media links. So I think this, again, isn't a must-have, but I do think it's incredibly helpful and, again, intuitive to people that when they are looking at your navigation or just in general, like the top area of your website, that they're going to be able to find links to your social media. So I would recommend linking the top 2 to 4 social media platforms you use most. Try not to link to ones you're not active on because we don't want people to click over to it and be like, oh, shouldn't even post here, But use the top 2 to 4 and be sure to link them to open in a new window. Okay, that's really important. When someone clicks over to your social media, we want them to stay on your website in one window and then it open in a new window with Instagram or whatever it is. So if you're not going to put them in your navigation, which sometimes you might not have room for them, or just might not make sense, if you have a button too and all that, it can be a little overwhelming. I would say put these in your footer of your website so that's consistent throughout. And at any point, someone can say, hey, I'm really feeling this chick. I want to follow her on Instagram. And then they can click over to your Instagram. Okay. Third, final tip. Focus on the mobile menu experience just as much and know that it might need to be different than your desktop experience. So for those of you who are Showit users, if you're not sure what Showit is, it is a amazing website software that I design templates on and my website is on and custom sites I build is on. So Showit's amazing. So if you Showit like I do though, you might notice in your template or on your custom site or whatever, that the mobile navigation, desktop navigation will often be 2 separate canvases within your site, which if you're like, what's a canvas? Don't worry about it. Basically 2 separate sections and areas. They're not the same thing. And one might be set to only view on mobile, and then one might be set to only view on desktop. If you, just to clarify too, if this will be helpful, if you bought a template from me that has a hamburger menu, it's going to be the same on both mobile and desktop. If you bought a template from me that has a standard menu, then it's going to be different on mobile and desktop. So that's a good rule of thumb. That's true of most templates. So that's okay though. That's a good thing because things need to be custom for that user experience. So I just want to make sure that as we talk about this, I know a lot of what I've said might have felt more focused on desktop, but make sure your mobile experience is awesome too. Most people, probably 50% of your traffic at least, is on mobile, which I know is such a bummer when we make these beautiful desktop sites, but mobile is really important. And we want people to be able to easily navigate around your site on their phones or iPads or however. So just make sure you're looking at both and following these same rules of not having more than 8 options, linking to social media when that makes sense and being really clear and concise in your wording. So yeah, you guys, that's it. Those are all my tips. I'm sure I can think of a gazillion more because there's so much to say about website menus, but I hope this is helpful and I hope that you'll go in to your website today, this week, whenever it makes sense for you and make some of these changes. And I want to kind of to close us out, give you some action steps based on these tips of things you can go in and change. I feel like that's really helpful to have hey, here's what you need to do. So I'm going to go through a couple things. Okay, so first thing you can do is make sure that you're not putting your menu on lead magnet pages or your footer on lead magnet pages, and then that your menu is on pages where people think it should be on. Remember going back to one of those early tips I shared that your about page needs to have a menu and things like that, and it needs to be consistent throughout the whole site. Okay, look at your navigation and see, am I using keywords that are specific to my business? Saying photography services, if that makes sense. And then am I being as concise and clear as possible so that people know what they're clicking into? Do I have more than 8 options? If so, try to cut some and, listen back. That was my tip number 2. And you can hear those questions I asked to help you figure out how to cut them. And then is your most important stuff first and last, and try to make sure you have the order in a way that makes sense in the way people expect. Do you have a gazillion drop-down menus? If so, maybe try to cut some. And then having your social media links either in the navigation or footer, and also looking at your mobile experience. Okay, that's it, you guys. Hope this was helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. If you want to send me a DM or tag me in your story sharing this on Instagram, or you can email us too. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you think. And I'll be back next week with another episode. Bye, you guys. Thank you for listening to the podcast this week, friend. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you about something. I would encourage you to check out my website template shop. Over on ElizabethMcCravey.com, you'll find Showit website templates, and they are easy to use, strategically designed, and created to help you book more clients and customers. Maybe your current website is really boring. I don't know, maybe it is, and maybe you don't want to hurt its feelings, but you know it's true. And your website needs to be strategically and intentionally designed in order for it to convert your viewers into raving customers. And that's what these website templates do on MShop. These are pre-made website templates built for the Showit platform where you can plug and play your content into the template with ease and then get started with a website that is made to actually make you money. Isn't that what we all want, right? So go shop the templates at ElizabethMcCravey.com/shop. That link is also in the show notes. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate it if you left a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or even just share it with a friend. It's a great way to support the show and then give us your feedback. So thanks so much for listening.